They say power is quiet. But that night, on the 56th floor of the Grand Royal Hotel, it thundered in silence. Damian Cole sat alone at his usual corner table, the one with the skyline view nobody else got. Manhattan stretched out beneath him like a conquered kingdom. A plate of untouched risotto cooled in front of him. His Rolex ticked against his wrist, but the time never mattered to men like him. Not anymore. He was the man behind Verity Systems, the multi-billion-dollar machine learning empire that had just absorbed its latest acquisition, an AI surveillance firm based in Toronto. The media called it a game-changer. His board called it a masterpiece. His competitors just called their lawyers. Tonight, he'd come here not to celebrate, but to disappear. Damian didn't do parties. He didn't do toasts. He did data. And control. Always control. Until her. Skylar Evans had only been working the late shift for 2 weeks. She wasn't assigned to his table. No one was. Most servers were too intimidated to get close. But the hostess had stepped out, and the manager was out back. So when table 17 rang the service bell, Skylar went. She didn't stutter when she asked for his drink order. She didn't flirt. She didn't pretend not to notice the tension radiating off him like static. Instead, she returned quietly, placed a glass of neat bourbon in front of him, and slid something else across the table. A napkin. White. Folded. Deliberate. She didn't look at him as she set it down. Didn't explain. Just walked away. Damian almost didn't touch it. He wasn't in the mood for games. But his hand moved before his ego could stop it. He opened the napkin. 3 lines. Scribbled in blue ink. The handwriting was careful, but not polished. Like someone who thought hard, not fast. You built a system that tracks pain. But do you feel it? Would you even know if you did? He didn't blink. Didn't breathe. In that moment, the city disappeared. The noise, the deals, the layers of armor he'd worn for a decade, gone. 1 napkin. 3 sentences. That's all it took to crack the walls of a man who thought he'd outgrown conscience. And for the first time in a very long time, Damian Cole paused. Damian didn't leave the restaurant right away. He just sat there, staring at the napkin like it might burst into flames. The bourbon went warm. The risotto turned cold. The lights of the city kept blinking like nothing had changed. But everything had. When he finally stood, the napkin was folded again, carefully this time, and slipped into the inner pocket of his tailored jacket. He didn't ask for the check. Someone would take care of it. That was the advantage of being him. Things disappeared when he walked away. But not her. He asked the maitre d', "Who was my server tonight?" The man hesitated. "Mr. Cole, we didn't assign anyone. That may have been a miscommunication." Was it? Damian's voice was calm. Too calm. The maitre d' scrambled, flipping pages in the reservation book. "Her name's Skylar. Skylar Evans. She's new. Part-time. Only nights." Damian gave a single nod. That was enough. He didn't sleep that night. Didn't try. He poured himself another drink in his penthouse, one of those cold, ultra-modern spaces with steel and glass and furniture no one ever actually sits in. The view was immaculate. The silence, oppressive. He took the napkin out again. Read it under the soft glow of a cabinet light. The words didn't hit him like before. This time, they bled. "You built a system that tracks pain. But do you feel it? Would you even know if you did?" It wasn't a threat. Or a challenge. It was worse. It was honest. And honesty had a way of crawling under the skin and refusing to leave. He pulled out his laptop. Looked up her name. Skylar Evans. 26. Columbia dropout. Studied moral philosophy. No criminal record. No debt. No digital footprint worth mentioning. Except an abandoned blog. He clicked. There were only 3 posts. The last one was titled, "What Good is Intelligence Without Compassion?" He didn't read it. He didn't have to. The next morning, Damian walked into Verity HQ like nothing was different. But his staff noticed the change. He didn't bark. Didn't demand. He barely spoke. Meetings ran short. His office stayed closed. By 7 o'clock that evening, he was back at the Grand Royal. Same table. Same drink. Same silence. She wasn't there. The new server said Skylar had switched shifts. Something about cutting hours. He left a note this time. Folded. Clean. 3 lines. You were right. I built a world of mirrors. But I never stopped to see myself. No name. Just the words. He didn't know if she'd read it. Didn't know if she'd care. But for the first time in years, Damian Cole did something unfamiliar. He waited. Some memories don't announce themselves. They just show up. Quiet. Uninvited. Like old songs you forgot you knew the words to. For Damian Cole, the memory came 2 days after Skylar disappeared from the restaurant floor. He was walking the marble halls of Verity's research wing, hands in his pockets, pretending to review updates on a pending AI model. But his mind was somewhere else. Not on algorithms or acquisition deals. Not even on the Napkin. It was on a bus stop bench in Atlanta, 16 years ago. He was 22. Broke. Brilliant. Angry. Sitting next to a woman who smelled like peppermint and worn pages. His mother. She'd once told him, smart don't mean good, baby. And fast don't mean right. If you ever build something that gets big, make sure it still knows how to kneel. Back then, he didn't understand. Now, the echo of her voice refused to let go. Back in the present, Damian sat in his office and pulled up her file again. Skylar Evans. It wasn't much. Columbia dropout. GPA. Impressive. Coursework. Moral philosophy, applied ethics, a semester of AI ethics that she withdrew from midterm. Why? He dug deeper. Found a headline. Promising philosophy student withdraws after mother's sudden death. The article was from 6 years ago. No photo. Just a paragraph. Her mother had collapsed during a night shift at a small-town nursing home in New Jersey. Overworked. Underpaid. The coroner's report listed the cause as an undiagnosed aneurysm. The subtext read clearer than ink. No one was paying attention. Skylar never returned to school. Damian stared at the screen. Then reached for his phone. Get me a full personal background check, he told his assistant. No legal overstep. Just public data. I want to know everything that's been missed. She raised an eyebrow. On who? He hesitated. Someone who sees what the rest of us ignore. Later that night, he drove. No driver. No security detail. Just Damian behind the wheel of a black Range Rover, following a Google Maps pin to a tiny cafe on the edge of Brooklyn, Daisy's Cup. The internet said she worked there now. He didn't expect to see her. But she was there. At a corner table by the window, notebook open, scribbling something with a purple pen. Her hair was up, messy. She wore a faded hoodie and sneakers that had clearly seen too many shifts. She looked like someone who'd stopped trying to impress the world a long time ago. He parked. Didn't get out. He just sat there for 10 minutes watching her through the glass. And for the first time in his career, Damian Cole, CEO, tech mogul, architect of logic and order, realized something profound. He didn't want to recruit her. He wanted to understand her. Not because she was brilliant, but because she was whole. And somewhere along the way, he'd forgotten how that felt. The bell above the door jingled with a soft chime as Damian stepped inside Daisy's Cup. It wasn't the kind of place he usually visited. No sleek chrome counters or biometric payment scanners. Just warm lights, a handwritten chalkboard menu, and the smell of cinnamon and roasted beans. Skylar looked up from her notebook. Their eyes met. She blinked once, then slowly closed the notebook, uncapping her purple pen and slipping it into her pocket like she was putting away a piece of herself. You're a long way from Wall Street, she said, not getting up. Damian hesitated, then approached the table. Do you mind? She gestured to the empty chair. It's not my table. Just my time. He sat. For a moment, neither spoke. The cafe hummed around them, cups clinking, steam hissing, indie folk music barely audible beneath the conversation of strangers. He set the napkin on the table between them. The one with her words. I've read this 100 times. She didn't look at it. That's a lot of reading for someone who already knows everything. He gave a small, almost self-deprecating smile. I don't. That's why I'm here. She leaned back, studying him like an exam question she wasn't sure was worth answering. So, what exactly do you want, Mr. Cole? You tracking my employment history now? Trying to buy insight like it's another startup? No, he said quietly. I came because what you wrote stopped me. Good, she said. Most people don't stop. They just optimize. That one stung. He nodded. You're not wrong. Skylar tilted her head, watching him. You built a machine that predicts behavior, right? One that claims it can see humanity coming before it arrives. He said nothing. You ever wonder what it misses? She continued. What it can't quantify. Damien leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice low. Every day. But the people funding it, they don't ask that. They just want results. Of course they do, she said, matter of fact. They want outcomes. But ethics isn't an outcome, Mr. Cole. It's a process. One you've designed your company to skip. He didn't argue. He couldn't. Skylar softened, just slightly. What did you really come here for? He hesitated, then said, to ask if you'd be willing to talk. Not as a consultant. Not as an employee. Just as someone who sees what I clearly don't. Her eyes narrowed, thoughtful. You want a conversation? Yes. Then start one that doesn't end in a pitch. She stood, grabbed her notebook, and walked toward the counter. Just before she reached it, she turned back. One more thing, she said. If you're gonna keep reading napkins, maybe learn to listen to people who don't have the luxury to write them. Then she was gone. Through the back door, into the staff hallway, leaving Damien at the table. Alone. But not unchanged. The first alert came at 7:14 a.m. A red banner flashed across Damien's dashboard in Verity's private dev console. AI behavior deviation detected. Tier 1 flag. He didn't panic. Systems hiccup. Code drifts. It happens. But by 9 a.m., it was more than a hiccup. News outlets were circling like sharks. A non-profit legal group had leaked internal documents showing that Verity's flagship AI, known internally as the Oracle, had flagged over 11,000 individuals across the country as moderate to high risk for future civic disruption. Most of them were immigrants. Many were women. Almost all were poor. The AI hadn't just profiled. It had proposed action. Automated denial of housing loans. Increased surveillance. Delayed citizenship processing. And the kicker, it was all technically legal, but morally. Damien's phone rang. Then again. Then again. Legal. PR. The board. The White House's tech ethics liaison. He ignored them all. Instead, he went to the server room. Floor 47. Access restricted. He stood in front of the primary terminal and stared at the command logs. The lines blurred on screen, each one a digital decision pretending to be neutral. But Skylar's words rang louder than ever. Ethics isn't an outcome. It's a process. He read the AI's justification algorithm aloud, half in disbelief. Behavioral preemption maximized by historical trend convergence and demographic clustering. He stopped. Demographic clustering. That was code for bias. Cleaned up. Dressed in data. He slammed the screen off and walked out. At 11:36 a.m., he stood in Verity's executive war room, glass walls, 40-foot table, 12 anxious faces. I authorized the Oracle's new rollout, he said, without flinching. I take full responsibility. The room went quiet. His CTO, a man who loved metrics more than people, spoke up first. With respect, Damien, the model was within statistical tolerance. Then the statistics are broken, Damien snapped. A young legal advisor raised her hand timidly. What are we telling the media? Damien paused, then answered, calm but clear. The truth. 12 jaws tensed. You realize what that means, the board chair said. Admitting algorithmic discrimination? That could tank our stock, ruin our government contracts. I'm aware, Damien said. But if this is what we built, then it needs to burn before it scales. No one spoke for a full minute. Finally, he added, pause the rollout. Immediately. Notify our partners. And start preparing an external audit. Then he turned to leave. As he reached the door, someone whispered, he's lost it. Maybe he had. Or maybe, for the first time, he'd finally found the part of himself that remembered what it meant to feel ashamed. And instead of hiding it, he decided to act on it. The flight to Atlanta was unplanned. Damien didn't bring an assistant, a laptop, or even a carry-on. Just a duffel bag, his phone set to silent, and an address scribbled on the back of a boarding pass. He hadn't been back in 20 years. Not since the day after the funeral, when he boarded a one-way train north and promised himself he'd never come back. But now, standing in front of the rusted iron gate at 812 Monroe Street, he felt like time had folded in on itself. The house was still there. Small. Weathered. Peeling white paint and a porch swing that never stopped squeaking. But somehow, solid. Like it had refused to fall just because the world forgot about it. He walked around back. The shed was still there too, his mother's makeshift study. The place she went when the noise inside got too loud. Damien used to sneak in there after school, reading her old theology books and scribbling formulas on napkins she kept near the kettle. He jiggled the door handle. Locked. But the key was still in the gutter. He smiled. Some things didn't change. Inside, dust danced in the beams of morning light. Books were stacked on every surface, spines faded, pages curled from humidity and time. On the desk sat a leather-bound journal with a cracked spine. Her journal. He opened it. Page after page of handwritten thoughts. Sermon notes. Personal prayers. Frustrations about hospital hours, grocery bills, and raising a black son in a system she never trusted. And then he found it. Tucked between 2 pages like a forgotten truth waiting to be found. A napkin. Just like the one Skylar had handed him. This one had a single line. Justice without empathy is just control. His chest tightened. He remembered that day. She'd said it out loud after coming home from a church meeting where they'd tried to automate the charity process. They want to build systems, baby, she'd said. But they forgot love doesn't run on rules. Damien sat on the old wooden stool and cried. Not loud. Not broken. Just quiet. The kind of tears that don't scream, they remember. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like the CEO of anything. He felt like a son. Later that afternoon, he took a walk through the neighborhood. Kids played basketball on cracked pavement. A man on a bike handed out flyers for a food drive. A grandmother swept her front steps while humming Sam Cooke under her breath. They didn't know who he was. But they smiled anyway. He stopped at the corner store, bought a Gatorade, and sat on the bench across from the old bus stop. The same one he and his mother used to wait at when the car broke down. He looked around and whispered to no one in particular. Maybe it's not about rewriting the system. Maybe it's about remembering who the system forgot. He pulled out his phone, opened a blank note, typed 4 words. Start again. With empathy. Then he stood up and headed home. Skylar was restocking the syrup station when she saw him. Same black coat. Same calm stare. But something was different. He looked quieter. Not tired. Not broken. Just stripped down. Like someone who'd left part of himself somewhere and come back only with the pieces that mattered. You again, she said without looking up. We starting a routine here? Damien offered a small nod, then motioned to the empty stool across the counter. Mind if I sit? She shrugged. Free country. He sat. Waited while she tightened a jar lid and wiped down the counter. Then she looked at him. Well, I want your help, he said plainly. She raised an eyebrow. To what? Write apology tweets for your AI. No, he said. To build something better. From the ground up. Skylar leaned back, arms folded. You have 5,000 engineers and a team of ethicists with degrees I couldn't afford to finish. Why me? Because they know rules, Damien said. You know consequences. She stared at him, long and hard. You want me in a boardroom? She asked. Wearing a blazer? Nodding politely while they all pretend bias is just a statistical glitch. No, he said. I want conversations. Weekly. One-on-one. No titles. No agenda. Just truth. Skylar didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached beneath the counter, pulled out a sticky notepad, and scribbled something. She slid it to him. Talking doesn't change systems. Action does. He looked at it, then at her. I know, he said. That's why I'm not asking you to join a committee. I'm asking you to keep me human while I build. She snorted. You want a conscience on retainer. I want a mirror I can't control. That stopped her. She blinked, surprised. No one had ever said that to her before. Not professors. Not past employers. Certainly not a billionaire with a Fortune 50 badge and a Wall Street reputation. He pulled something from his coat pocket. Not a contract. Not a check. A journal. Worn. Weathered. He placed it gently on the counter. My mother's, he said. She wrote about justice with empathy. About systems that serve, not just scale. Schuyler touched the leather cover without opening it. Then pulled her hand back, like it was sacred. Okay, she said softly. I'll talk. He nodded once, grateful. But not in an office, she added. We meet here. Booth 3. Tuesdays. I bring coffee. You bring truth. Damien smiled. Deal. She looked at him one more time, then turned back to her syrups. Start small, Cole. The world doesn't need another lecture. It needs a lesson. As he left the cafe, Damien glanced down at the sticky note still in his hand. He folded it carefully, placed it in the back of his mother's journal, and for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was finally in the right room. The boardroom at Verity HQ had always been Damien's domain. It was a cold, modern fortress of tempered glass, brushed steel, and long silences. The kind of room where people didn't raise their voices, they raised their valuations. But that morning, everything felt different. Damien stood at the head of the table, sleeves rolled up, a marker in one hand, and a whiteboard full of words no one expected to see in this room. Pause. Empathy. Consequence. Human override. Around the table sat 12 of his most trusted executives and lead engineers, some of the brightest minds in tech. And yet, most of them looked annoyed. He finished his pitch with a simple sentence. We're not just updating the Oracle. We're reprogramming its moral DNA. Silence. Then, from the far end of the table, came the familiar voice of Richard Voss, Verity's chief operating officer. Damien, he said slowly, this isn't a philosophy class. Our clients pay for clarity, not hesitation. Damien didn't flinch. And what happens when clarity causes harm? When we move so fast we don't see who we're stepping on. A younger engineer leaned forward. Lena, head of behavioral AI. Look, she said carefully, I get what you're saying, but adding a delay to every high-risk decision? That's inefficient. It messes with real-time performance. I'd rather be slow and right, Damien replied, than fast and dangerous. Richard scoffed. Do you know what that kind of pause will cost us in Q4? Damien stepped closer to the board, drew a simple triangle. Profit, progress, people, then circled the last one. I'm choosing this. Someone laughed under their breath. It wasn't mean, just dismissive. That was worse. Richard folded his arms. So what? You're rewriting the core logic of our flagship product because some cafe waitress gave you a napkin. Damien turned slowly. No, he said, steady. I'm rewriting it because she reminded me of the one thing we're all supposed to be building toward, better decisions. Not just faster ones. Lena looked down. Others shifted uncomfortably. Richard stood. If you push this, the board's gonna have questions. Let them, Damien said. We've built machines smart enough to model crime, pain, even grief, but we never stop to ask, what's the cost of being right without being kind? He looked around the room. Empathy isn't weakness. It's the first check before every great decision. No one spoke. Then quietly, Lena said, I'll run a parallel build. Quietly. See what it does. Damien nodded. That's all I'm asking. As the meeting ended, people filed out with hushed tones and furrowed brows. Richard was the last to leave. He stopped at the door. You're risking everything you built. Damien didn't look up. No, he said. I'm finally building what matters. Richard walked out. Damien exhaled. Behind him, on the whiteboard, the words remained. Pause. Empathy. Consequence. And underlined in bold, in Skylar's handwriting from a sticky note. Talking doesn't change systems. Action does. Now he was doing both. It started with a headline. Verity AI delays national rollout, cites ethical pause. Within hours, it spread like wildfire. Tech blogs, financial outlets, evening news anchors. Some called it courageous. Others called it corporate suicide. By midday, the company's stock dropped 8%. 2 board members requested emergency meetings. Anonymous sources accused Damien of jeopardizing innovation for optics. And the press? They had a field day. Has Damien Cole gone soft? Billionaire CEO trades precision for philosophy. Is empathy the new efficiency, or a roadblock? Damien ignored it. He was in a classroom. A real one. A public high school on the south side of Chicago, where Verity had planned to beta test a student safety AI. The pilot had been frozen after Damien's pause order. But he came anyway, to explain why. The principal, a woman named Mrs. Jefferson, eyed him carefully as she led him down the halls. Most CEOs wouldn't come here, she said. I'm not most CEOs anymore, he replied. He stood in front of 23 students, most of them barely paying attention, until he said this. I built an AI that could predict danger, but I forgot to teach it how to understand people. That's on me. That made them look up. Afterward, a student approached him. 17. Hoodie. Beat-up sneakers. You the guy that paused the rollout? The kid asked. Damien nodded. The kid smiled. Good. Maybe now my brother won't get flagged for being poor and mad. Damien froze. No applause. No press. Just truth. And it hurt. Back at Verity, the storm was peaking. The board chair called an emergency vote, non-binding, but symbolic. Whether Damien's leadership should be re-evaluated. 10-2. Against him. The message was clear. That evening, as the city skyline blinked behind tinted windows, Damien sat across from Skylar at booth 3. He looked tired. She looked ready for war. They voted against you? She asked, sipping black coffee. He nodded. They think I'm reckless. And are you? He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and placed something on the table. A whiteboard photo. Skylar's handwriting circled in red. Action. I'm not here to convince them, he said. I'm here to prove the system's not worth saving if it can't make space for decency. Skylar leaned forward. You realize what that means, right? If you lose your seat, then I walk, Damien interrupted. And we build something new. Something real. She stared at him, then finally said, Good. He exhaled. Not in relief. In resolve. Sometimes doing the right thing doesn't earn applause. Sometimes it costs you everything you thought you needed. But that's how change begins. Not in boardrooms, but in classrooms, in cafes, in sticky notes and stubborn mirrors, and in one man finally realizing. Empathy wasn't a delay. It was the starting line. It was raining when Damien made the call. Not a storm. Not a downpour. Just that steady kind of rain that softened everything it touched. Cars, sidewalks, memories. He stood by his office window, watching droplets race down the glass like time finally slowing down. Then he picked up his phone. Draft the letter, he told his chief of staff. Effective immediately. I'm stepping down. There was a pause on the other end. Are you sure? No, he replied. But I'm certain. He didn't pack a box. Didn't clear the desk. His space was never about pictures or plants anyway. Just whiteboards and noise-canceling walls. Instead, he left one thing behind. Taped to his office door, a single napkin. The same one Skylar had given him. The one that changed everything. Downstairs, the lobby buzzed with whispers. No formal press release yet, but word travels fast in glass towers. Some people stared. Some nodded. A few avoided eye contact. He didn't mind. At the corner of 5th and Lexington, an Uber pulled up to the curb. Inside waited someone he'd asked to meet in person. Lena, head of behavioral AI. She'd been one of the few voices in the room that hadn't scoffed. The one who quietly ran a shadow build of the empathy-enhanced Oracle model, just in case. When he slid into the back seat beside her, she looked surprised. "You're actually doing it," she said. "I already did." She sat quiet for a moment, then asked, "Why me?" "Because you listened when everyone else calculated. Because this version of the company doesn't need a king. It needs a compass." She looked down at her lap, processing. "And Skylar?" she asked. "She's not taking a title," he said. "But she's taking a seat at the design table. Every Tuesday." Lena smiled. "She'll keep us honest." Damien nodded. "That's the point." They rode in silence until the car pulled up to a small community tech center on the edge of Harlem. No corporate logo. Just a painted sign. The Ground Floor Project. Inside, volunteers were setting up folding chairs, unpacking donated laptops, and scribbling lesson plans on whiteboards. A second chance in motion. Damien held the door open for Lena. "This is where it starts now," he said. She stepped in slowly, eyes wide. "This is different." He grinned. "Exactly." Later that evening, he stood alone on the rooftop of his old office building. The skyline shimmered beneath a clearing sky. He pulled out his phone. Typed a single message to Skylar. "The chair is yours now. Keep the light on." No signature. No goodbye. Just a handoff. Because legacy isn't about what you leave behind. It's about what you choose to lift up. And for the first time in his career, Damien Cole walked away from power. Not because he lost it, but because he finally understood what it was for. Booth 3 wasn't just a table anymore. It had become something else. Sacred in its simplicity. The kind of place where nothing fancy happened, but everything important did. Skylar sat there first this time. 2 mugs. No sugar. Just black coffee and honesty. Damien arrived 5 minutes late, which she'd never seen him do before. No blazer. No driver. Just jeans, a hoodie, and a soft look she couldn't quite read. "You're late," she said, sipping. "I'm human now," he replied, sliding into the seat across from her. She smiled. Not mocking. Not smug. Just gently amused. "So," she said, folding her hands, "you really walked away." "I had to," he said. "It was starting to cost me things I didn't want to lose." "Like what?" He paused. Looked at her. "Like this." She blinked, thrown off. "Booth 3. No," he said softly. "The space to tell the truth. The space to be seen for more than what I build or what I control." She leaned back, crossing her arms. "And what exactly do you want from me now?" Damien looked down, then back up, his voice low but steady. "Forgiveness." That stopped her. "You think you hurt me?" she asked. "I think I helped build something that hurt a lot of people. And I didn't listen until someone handed me a napkin instead of a lawsuit." Skylar looked away. The rain outside tapped gently on the cafe window, like it was listening, too. "You didn't owe me anything," she said quietly. "I wrote that note because I was angry, but also because I hoped someone like you would read it and maybe, just maybe, do something different." "You didn't just change me," he said. "You saved me." Skylar laughed, short and sharp. "Let's not get poetic. I gave you 1 sentence. You did the hard part." "No," Damien replied. "The hard part was believing I still could." Silence settled in, not awkward, just honest. Then Skylar reached into her bag, pulled out a notebook, flipped it open, tore out a page. She slid it across the table. It was a sketch. A rough pencil drawing of 2 figures sitting across from each other. One wore a hoodie, one wore an apron. In between them sat a napkin. Above them, in her messy handwriting, "Booth 3, where systems broke and people started." Damien stared at it. Skylar shrugged. "I draw when I need to remember what matters." He folded the paper gently. "I'll keep this one safe." They sipped their coffee. No big gestures. No confessions. Just 2 people who once stood on opposite sides of a system. Now quietly choosing to build something, side by side. Outside, the rain had stopped. But inside Booth 3, something rare remained. Peace. And maybe, if they were lucky, the start of something more. They didn't put up a banner. There was no grand opening, no press conference, no live-streamed announcement. Just a door. A glass one, tucked between a laundromat and a corner grocery in a part of the city no one ever labeled tech-ready. And behind that door, the world was changing. Quietly. The sign read, "The Ground Floor Project, Technology with a Pulse." Inside, a row of second-hand computers lined folding tables. Children coded simple games. Veterans learned how to access health portals. Single mothers asked real questions about AI, about fairness, safety, trust. And every Thursday afternoon, in the back room, Skylar and Damien sat with a group of volunteers, educators, former engineers, parents, community leaders, designing open-source ethical frameworks anyone could understand. Not for billion-dollar systems, but for schools, shelters, clinics, places where decisions weren't just data, they were life. On one particular Thursday, a teenager named Jalen raised his hand. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "You already had it all." Damien smiled. "No," he said. "I had everything but meaning." Skylar added, "And meaning doesn't come from building systems people fear. It comes from building systems people can trust." The room went quiet. Not because it was profound, but because it was finally clear. That night, Damien stood on the rooftop of the community center, watching the city hum beneath the stars. Skylar joined him, holding 2 mugs of cheap instant coffee. "It's not the empire you used to run," she said, sipping. "No," he replied. "It's better. Because this one listens before it speaks." She smiled. "That's the hardest part for most people, listening." "And the rarest," he said. Then he pulled something from his pocket. A worn napkin. The original. Still creased, still smudged, still sacred. "You want to frame it," she teased. "No," Damien said, holding it up to the night. "I want to remember what stopped me long enough to change." He handed it to her. "Your turn." Skylar took it carefully, pressed it flat against her palm, and whispered, "I never thought one sentence could carry this much weight." "Sometimes," he said, "the world doesn't need a manifesto. Just a moment." Below them, the lights from the center glowed soft and steady. Not flashy. Not loud. Just human. And that was the lesson. The kind of technology that changes lives doesn't start with speed, or scale, or code. It starts with pause. With empathy. With the radical belief that listening is not weakness, but wisdom. That the people we overlook might hold the truth we've been building away from all along. So if you're still listening, wherever you are, whoever you are, remember this. You don't have to build something massive to matter. You just have to build something that sees people. And sometimes, that starts with a folded napkin, and the courage to care. If this story moved you, share it. Drop a comment. Let us know where you're watching from. And if you've ever had a moment, just one, that made you stop and see the world differently, we'd love to hear it. Until next time, be kind, be human, and don't forget to pause.